family has their like quirky thing, or quirky things, really. Some of you aren't nodding, and I know your families have quirky things. Yes. Oh, okay. Some of us aren't acknowledging it. That's fine. So one of my family's quirky things is my mom. She's a great party thrower, a great host, and whenever like she goes to a store and she sees a fancy pantry item, she buys it, but then she'll save it for a really long time for like some kind of special event. And every time my sisters and I go in our pantry and we'll say, hey mom, can we use this, fancy grilled artichoke hearts or this like really fancy jam? She'll say, no, we're saving that. And we always joke, like, who are you saving this for? Like the Barefoot Contessa or like the Queen when she comes over to dinner. But what ends up happening is she saves it so long that it expires. And then we don't actually ever like get to enjoy it. But that's just my mom wanting to be a great host and wanting to throw a great party. What kinds of silly things do you do when you're having people over, when you're having special people over? Do you pull out the fancy hand towels, or do you pull out that really like ugly salad bowl that the person gave you and you're just gonna pretend like you use it all the time even though you don't like it? Or what about when you're with someone and last minute they decide they're gonna come over to your place and you run like 2 red lights because you have to get there 5 minutes before they do to throw everything in the closet and pretend like your house looks like this all the time? Anyone do that? No? Just me? Okay, a couple of us, yes, yeah. What kind of silly things do you do when you're having a special guest over? The passage that we're looking at is in Luke 10, if you want to pull out your Bibles, or it's in the notes that we shared with you. And in this passage, Jesus is walking with his followers, and they come to this village, and there's this woman, Martha, who invites them in for dinner. Luke 10, verse 39 says, her sister Mary sat at the Lord's feet. But Martha was distracted by the big dinner she was preparing. She came to Jesus and said, Lord, doesn't it seem unfair to you that my sister just sits here while I do all the work? Tell her to come help me. But the Lord said to her, my dear Martha, you are worried and upset over all these details. There is only one thing worth being concerned about. Mary has discovered it, and it will not be taken away from her. Okay, so Jesus is with his followers, and they go to this woman's house, Martha. She welcomes them in. She's like so distracted by everything going on. And then here's her sister, probably the younger sister, right? Because the older siblings are always like concerned about everything that we have to do. And I'm the younger sibling saying this. So she's sitting here listening to Jesus, and she's so upset. If I'm being honest, I've never really liked this story. Like, I've always had a really hard time with this story because here is Martha doing what needs to be done. Like, they gotta eat. Somebody's gotta make the dinner. Someone has to do this. And this passage comes right after Jesus sends out 72 people to go do his work. And he says, hey, like, eat whatever they feed you. Drink whatever they give you. Don't bring anything with you. Receive people's hospitality. And then after that, we have the parable of the Good Samaritan, which is all about loving your neighbor, who is also your enemy, and caring for people and receiving them and hospitality. And here is Martha doing that. She's serving. She's extending hospitality. She's honoring Jesus. So why does Mary get the gold star? Why does Mary get the gold star? I feel for Martha. Like, I can feel her anxiety. She's running around the house trying to make sure everything's clean, worried about if the food is going to taste good, worried about how she's actually going to afford to pay for this food for all these unexpected guests. Why does Mary get the gold star? I can just picture Martha, like, trying to give all of these signs to Mary, like, Mary, get in here, like, come help me, right? Until she like gets so angry, she's like, yo, Jesus, if you want to eat today, could you tell my sister to come in here and help me? Like, I know we're all hungry, right? Why does Mary get the gold star? Mary is sitting at Jesus's feet. This is not like a sign that Mary's just like being lazy and hanging out, but this is actually a posture of discipleship. Like, this is a posture of wanting to learn from Jesus. Mary's actually so enthralled with Jesus that she doesn't care about any of the other details. She's submitting to Jesus. She wants to be a follower of Jesus. And what's so crazy is that Martha's like living up to the cultural expectations. Like, she is doing what would have been expected of her as a woman, to serve, to make the meal. And Mary wants to be a follower of Jesus, wants to be a disciple, which women didn't do. Like, everybody had disciples, not just Jesus. Pharisees had disciples, John the Baptist had disciples. There were people who were following them and listening from them, and Mary puts herself in this position. Mary wants Jesus to be her master. Meanwhile, Martha has all of these other masters. Martha wants to be in control. She wants everything to go smoothly. She wants everything to go well. She's trying to live up to these cultural expectations because what will people think of her if she doesn't? Maybe she wants to be a better host than Ruth across the street. She's trying to live into these expectations. She wants everything to be perfect. Even though she's doing all the right things, it's coming from the wrong place. It's not coming from a place of being loved by God, of love of God and love of neighbor. She's worried about what people will think of her. She wants to serve other people and love other people so that they'll love and accept her. Maybe she wants everything to be perfect because she doesn't want to feel like a failure. Because she wants to convince other people that she's not a failure. The things that she's doing, the service is not coming from a place of love. Maybe she wants to be acknowledged. She wants to be recognized so people will see her. See, I'm such a great host. Look at everything I'm doing. Jesus is eating at my house. Last week, I started a series called This Is Us, which is all about this mission statement that the elders and I have come up with over the last couple months. We've been trying to describe what Reunion is about and where we're going in one sentence. Quite a challenging task. And the first part of that sentence I talked about last week, Reunion is a welcoming church of everyday people. And the second part of that sentence, it says we're committed to developing apprentices of Jesus. An apprentice of Jesus is anyone who says, I want to follow Jesus. I want to learn about him. I want to be more like him. I want to do what he does. How can you be a follower of Jesus if you're not listening to him? If you're not sitting at his feet? If you're not submitting to his ways? I think one of the temptations for us in our culture right now is to kind of just let discipleship happen. Just like hope that, over time we'll become more like Jesus. Or if you've grown up in the church, one of the temptations throughout my life for me has been to think that I know all of the stories. Like, I know the theology. I've asked the hard questions. I know what Jesus expects of me. I know what the right thing is and the wrong thing. And I'm just going to keep doing that. And just let, discipleship kind of happen. But the problem is, right now we live in this secular culture where there are so many masters competing for our attention that the way of Jesus is actually antithetical to the ways of the world. I talk about this a lot. Jesus says, hello, getting really better at catching here. The world says, accumulate more stuff, get more money, save up, secure yourself. While Jesus says, give all that you have to the poor. Share your resources. Jesus says, love your enemy and pray for those who persecute you. This is not the way of the world. It would be nice if we could just idly wait to become more like Jesus, but it's something that we actively pursue We sit ourselves at Jesus' feet. Because when we don't sit ourselves at Jesus' feet, what ends up happening is everything that we do, even though it might feel like the right thing, it becomes a burden, like Martha. We become so anxious. We take on the weight of all of these things that we don't actually need to do. Like when it comes to justice, we know Jesus is about justice. But it's so tempting to pursue that for the wrong reasons. If you're a person of privilege, to pursue that out of guilt. Or because you think, or you're worried, like, that people need to see that you care about these things. But when it comes from the wrong place, we become so burnt out and tired. And we become divisive. Look at Martha. She's doing all the right things, but she's harboring all this anger and resentment towards Mary. I love her passive aggression here. Hey, Jesus, can you tell my sister? Like, I really wish Jesus would just say, yo, Martha, tell your sister, she's right there. You guys go have a conversation. But he doesn't, because he's Jesus, right? When we don't sit at Jesus' feet, it becomes a burden. We become divisive. I am so convinced that more than ever, it's critical for us actively to pursue Jesus, to let him form us. Because look around. Can we just talk about 2020 for a second? Like, it's complete chaos. And it's not even over. The West Coast is burning down. Like, I hate to be the bearer of bad news here, but 2020 is not over. I remember back in November when I was moving here to take this job. Do you guys remember that? I got rejected at the border the first time. Like, remember when your biggest problem was whether or not your pastor was going to be able to get into the country? Good times. And I remember I was back in Chicago with Bobby. We were trying to figure all this stuff out to get me over the border. And it was cold because it's windy in Chicago. And we're like running to my car, and we sit in my car, and I look over at Bobby and I'm like, Bobby, is this what winter is like in Canada? And her face, she just goes blank. And I could see she's like processing, like, how do I respond to this? And she's so serious. She says, Grace, it's 10 times colder. And I knew in that moment, like, okay, I need to buckle up because winter is coming. Things are about to get serious. This is not the time to just idly wait for discipleship to happen. This is the time to buckle up because things could get worse. There's plenty of time left for tragedy, and there's also plenty of time left for transformation. There's plenty of time left in 2020 for God to do a good work in us, for us to become more like Jesus, for us to pursue what God is doing in the world. The world is going to tell you, you need to live a happy life. You need to live a comfortable life. You need to be the best spouse. You need to be the breadwinner. You need to be the best teacher, the best at your job. You need to be happy. Keep all of this stuff. And Jesus says, no, 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 no. There's one thing. Don't worry about all of those other things. There's one thing that matters. Me. Follow me. Let me show you a burden that is light. Let me take care of you. Let me assure you that no matter what is going on in the world, you will be okay because you have me. Jesus offers us a completely other way to live. Now, as I talk about actively pursuing Jesus, that may seem a little bit overwhelming because I know, like, a lot of us are tired, right? 2020 has been quite the year. It's been hard. It's been hard for me too. I'll admit that. But following Jesus is not about adding more things to do. It's not about burdening. It's about unburdening. Releasing all of this weight, this anxiety, these expectations onto Jesus. There's plenty of time in 2020 for tragedy and plenty of time left for transformation. That's what I believe the invitation for us is right now. So I'm going to give you some time to discuss in distanced groups. A couple questions. First, do you ever feel like Martha? Do you feel like Martha right now? What is weighing on you? Like, what is causing you anxiety? What is making you feel tired? And what is the invitation to you? What does it look like for you to actively pursue discipleship, to try and pursue Jesus, to try and sit at Jesus' feet and become more like him? Maybe it's just, I want to learn more about him. Maybe it's, I want to read a psalm every day. Maybe it's, I want to have a regular rhythm of prayer with someone. Like once a week, I'm going to hop on a call with this person and we're going to pray together. What would it look like for you to actively pursue formation, to let Jesus form you? So take like 5 to... a friend of mine recently said to me, Grace, I am so Martha. Like, I am Martha, and I so badly just want to be Mary. But I don't even know how to do that. Like, I don't even know how to unburden, like, all these expectations I feel, or all the things that I take on, right? Like, at times it's actually really hard just to be Mary, just to be aware of the desire that we have for more or for God, and just to sit in that and be enthralled by Jesus. It's like, it's a process, right? I think one of the other temptations, or the things that we're tempted to believe in our journey with Jesus, is that we kind of like arrive. We get it. We know this is the way, but the truth is it just keeps getting better. Like, Jesus just keeps getting better. You absorb more of his love and the life that he offers, and you feel more free. And that's really the invitation. So I'm going to invite Drew back up. And if you brought elements for communion during this last song, you can take those. Jesus with his followers, before he died, he had a last meal. And he passed around this loaf of bread. And he said, this here is my body. And he passed around this cup of wine and said, this is my blood. Eat and drink and do this in remembrance of me. And this is one way that we allow ourselves to sit at Jesus' feet, by practicing communion, by remembering the sacrifice that he made for us. So feel free to do that on the last song. And as a reminder, write on your block if you haven't, or draw a picture if you haven't done that yet. Let me just pray for us. God, so many of us come here like burdened by so much anxiety about like all of the what ifs. What if this happens? What's going to happen with school? And the expectation just to be, maybe even just to be perfect, to have everything right, check all the boxes, to live into a certain role or expectation, to be acknowledged, to be someone. There's so many burdens that we carry. And actually, it can be difficult to even know how do we release ourselves of those? How do we sit at Jesus's feet? How do we sit at your feet, God? And I just pray that you would lead us to that place where we are just aware of your love, where we feel you delighting in us. Would you bring us to that space now? Would you help us unburden these things? Pray these things in your name. Amen.